I'll go ahead and call to order the Board of Library Trustees special meeting being held on Thursday, December 15th, and it is 4:03 p.m. Francesca, could you call the roll, please?
Yes. Trustee Moreau,
Here.
Trustee Silvera,
Here.
Trustee Petty,
Here.
Vice Chair Joshi,
Here.
and Chair Falgout.
Here. Consent items. The only consent item we have is approval of the minutes. I will entertain a motion for approval.
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. Is there any discussion? Do trustees have any corrections? And if not, let's go ahead and vote. All those in favor?
We actually have to do the roll.
Oh, we do?
Roll
Okay,
call.
go for it.
Thank you. Trustee Moreau,
Yes.
thank you. Trustee Silvera,
Aye.
Trustee Petty,
Yes.
Vice Chair Joshi,
Yes.
and Chair Falgout.
Yes.
Thank you.
Now is the time for public comments. Public comments allows you, the public, to speak for a maximum of 3 minutes on any subject which is not on the agenda. Any person or group desiring to bring an item to the attention of the library board may do so during public comments or by addressing a letter of explanation to Library Director, Monterey Public Library, 625 Pacific Street, Monterey, California, 93940. The appropriate staff person will contact the sender concerning the details. Do we have any public comments?
Now, and just to let any public viewers know, if you are connected on Zoom, you can raise your Zoom hand. You can also dial in by telephone 833-568-8864. Enter meeting ID 161-352-8864, followed by the pound sign. To raise your hand, dial *9. Once called upon, dial *6 to unmute. And there are no public comments at this time, Chair Falgout.
Thank you. Next item on the agenda are public appearance. Public appearance items are reports on action or informational issues that might stimulate public discussion, but do not require formal noticing as public hearings. You're welcome to offer your comments after being recognized by the chair. The chair may limit the time allocated to each speaker. The first public appearance item is item 2, approve change to 2023 library holiday and closure schedule. And so, Brian, do you want to take the lead on this one?
Sure. Thank you, Chair Falgout. So as you may recall from the last meeting, we discussed the dates for the holiday closures and operation hours for the library and bookmobile for 2023. And one of the days that we had on there was for the chocolate and wine event for the Friends and Foundation. So after the event, after the last meeting, the Friends and Foundation came back and said, we want to move this back to February, and they're looking at February 25th. So going forward with that, they felt that there was less competing days with the for the people that were donating for the wine, people donating for the chocolate, and for other events happening in that month of April versus February. So with that, they're looking at a event time of 6 to 8 p.m. rather than a 7 to 9 p.m. They had also proposed, and you'll see in the packet, they had also proposed just doing a late afternoon of a 4 p.m. to 6 p.m. Program, which would, if we had that with a 3 hours prior closure, that would be a 1 p.m. closure, which I don't recommend, staff doesn't recommend, because that would really impact the general public coming into the library, or even an earlier program. They had asked about doing it at, so the alternate that we also talked with them about, Friends and Foundation, was offered Sunday, because there's no impact to staffing because we are closed on Sunday, but there were scheduling conflicts for the Friends and Foundation for that Sunday out there. So with that, that's the first item. There is also the second part of this is regarding the feedback from the Thanksgiving. So with that, any questions? And I think Trustee Petty has a question.
Bob?
Yes, thank you. Could you explain a little more, Brian, why the date for the chocolate and wine event was changed? Because I thought it was a fantastic idea to have it in the spring instead of in February. And I just have to register. I'm very, very disappointed that it's been moved back. So can you explain more as to why it's not? I think it was going to be in April, is that right? Or
Correct.
Yeah.
March or April?
April
And
22nd, Earth
I
Day.
just thought that was a great improvement, and I don't know if it's already in concrete or if we can move it back at the board level to the April date, but I was wondering if you could give us more background on that.
And that was on the Friends and Foundation when their leadership met on their planning committee. They felt that there were too many competing events around that week there in April and other events going on there.
Library events?
No, other community events that were out there. Then also for the donors, the people that were donating the chocolate or the donors for food and for wine, that there was less competition around that time when they were reaching out to their partners for them, that they were more apt to get the donations in February than they were to get them in April, because the other community agencies and other programs and other community events happening in April, that they would be asking the same groups for donations. So they were saying they were going to get less donations to help support the program in April than they were in February. And they came back with the program event for February 25th is the date that they have requested with that.
Marcia?
As I recall, it used to be right around Valentine's Day, right? It was in February for a long time. I think this event is their event. It's the Friends and Foundation event. And so it seems to me that they must have discussed this at length, and they probably have a good reason to do that. And they're the ones that are going to do all the work, and they're the ones that are going to ask for the donations. So I would suggest, or you might want to consider respecting their judgment on this one, since it's their event.
Any other trustees have comments or concerns? Yeah, Joshi?
I
Harish?
believe they moved it to April originally because of COVID concerns, that in April they could leave everything open, and leaving everything open in February meant that we'd be cold inside.
Right.
So I was surprised also to hear that it had come back, but it's like Marcia said, it's their decision, it's their program. So
I have a feeling that there will be, for the reasons that Harish mentioned, the attendance would have been, or we would expect more attendance in a warmer weather month, like April compared to February. And I mean, I don't know. I mean, the library is an important thing in the community, and if we're worried about competing with other organizations or agencies or something, it's not with another city event, it's other external events. I mean, external to the city. I just don't think that, we should worry about that. But I think the point that Harish brought up, it makes all the sense in the world, that having it in a warmer weather month makes more sense, especially if we get such a big turnout. I remember it was crowded the last couple times we had it in person, and if the weather was nice, it'd be nice to be able to use the back patio as well as the upstairs terrace. But we sure as heck aren't going to do that in February. And Marcia's right, though, it's their event, and if they want to hold it at 6 a.m. just because they want to, even though we think it's a lousy time. It's up to them to do it, and thank them for whatever comes out of it. But it does affect our closing of the library. So I guess that's why the board has some say in the matter. However, I sort of agree with the feeling that Harish was expressing, that especially if we want to use those 2 outdoor venues as part of it, which we should, because I've been upstairs every year for a decade serving homebrew chocolate stout, and I know how crowded it gets up there. And if we could use that outdoor patio, it just relieves the congestion in the upstairs area. And I think using the patio is something that should be added to the operation of the venue, again, for reduced crowding. And I'm just disappointed, and I wish that somehow it could be moved back to a warmer month. But Marcia's quite right. They can hold it whenever they want.
Marcia, then Brian.
Yeah, I'm just curious, Brian, I think you attended the meeting. Did the issue about COVID come up at all? And did they discuss that, or was it just didn't come up?
When they discussed the change to February, I was not at that meeting.
Oh,
It
okay.
happened after the initial meeting when we had the discussion.
Well, Harish, you were
and-
there, right? No, were you there?
No, I was not.
Oh,
No,
okay.
and it happened afterwards, and I think they went to they went to talk to people one by one to kind of go over that. And then at the last meeting that they held was actually at the same time as the new mayor and council were being sworn in, and so I was attending remotely the council session, so I didn't attend that session.
Okay.
But they'd already talked about doing the February by that time, and they felt that still outdoors would be possible. I did recommend to them to say that we should still try to do outdoors as much as possible and rent out those heated lamps that you'll see outside of like restaurants and everything, so that put a couple out on the terrace, put some on the back patio. If you need to rent something that's a covered a canopy or something like that, but work with some places so that you can have the ability to do outdoors, because I agree that if it's something in the colder months, you do want to have something outside. And but I think they were saying that there are a number of people still really ready and willing to attend the events coming out in there, and they felt February wasn't going to dissuade people from attending versus April. So yeah, it is like you said, it's their event on there. I've given my feedback of what I've thought about it, and then there have been, and if they are really tied to the February 25th, which sounds like from all of their board that that's really where they want to go. I still think having it later, so the 6 to 8 rather than an afternoon or earlier in the day, is going to be ideal for us, so that it's minimal impact, and having that 3 hours, so closing at 3, starting the event at 6 is going to be ideal for that.
I agree with you, Brian. When I look at it, that our decision is not to schedule it. Our decision is, do we approve closing the library an hour early that day or not? And for me personally, an hour wouldn't break the deal, wouldn't break the bank for me, but I'd be curious how others feel. Or is there a great degree of concern, or would you be willing to give up an hour of service so that we can go ahead and hold the event when they want, but minimize the impact on the library itself?
Brian, what was their logic behind changing it from 7 to 9 to 6 to 8?
I didn't hear that part either. That was at the last meeting that was out there, but it was I think it was just they actually preferred to have it earlier in the day during the months, that they felt more people would come around 4 to 6. And I still felt that was going to be too early, that they're in the nice, so they wanted something earlier where it'd still be light out around 4 to 6 p.m. But because of the impact that has on the library operations, that's why I don't recommend that. That is an option too, that to go with their recommendation of 4 to 6 p.m. and instead going towards a 6 to 8 p.m., which is a little bit more reasonable in my mind for operations for this.
Well, I agree that, you know, the more hours we close the library, the more we regret it. But this is a special event, and sometimes the library is closed for an entire day when it would normally be open, like for staff training or something. And if we're going to have an event, I don't think we should have it at dinner time. I think 4 to 6 would be better than 6 to 8, and close the library after half day. You know, or close it at 1, or so that people either come before dinner and go home, or they come after dinner. But if you have it from 6 to 8, I think that's a very inconvenient time. And if you're talking about attendance, I mean, that's just stacking the cards against it. Plus the notion, if you're going to do it in February, wouldn't you want to do it when it's at least a little warmer outside, not to mention still light out? So I would prefer, if we're going to change things around, that we, despite the fact we have to close the library a couple hours earlier that day for this very special occasion and event, I would rather do that and have it take place when it's warmer out, it's lighter out, and it's before dinner.
However, if they need 3 hours to do setup, if your event is from 1 to 4, then it's almost like closing the library that day.
Well, I will say, Sheriff Philgood, I think with the last time I talked with their President Alley was, I think she was leaning towards the 4 to 6 p.m. So
Yeah.
like what Trustee Petty's mentioning, I do think that 1 p.m. is their preferred closure time. So it is a half day opening. It's a 10 to 1 opening of the day. And then it is still pretty much light out. So it is before kind of dinner time. So it does change kind of, I think, as Trustee Petty's talking about, changes also what food you are, you know, the bites of your serving right, from 4 to 6 versus 6 to 8 p.m. You
Well,
know,
and
kind
I
of the
can
expectations.
I can understand if you have older people like me. A lot of us just are not real fond of driving after dark. So I can understand the rationale. If many of your donors are in that age group, I can see the appeal. What are thoughts from the other board members as far as closing at 1 o'clock that day and then having the event starting at 4? Go ahead, Marcia.
I mean, I think it is feasible. I think, you know, that if as long as not closed for the whole day, I think maybe it would be a good idea if we ask Brian to reflect our discussion back to the leadership of the Friends and Foundation so that they hear what we have to say about it and see if, you know, if that makes sense to them. But you know, I think you're right. The earlier time, the 4 to 6 makes it more like a sort of a cocktail hour. And in the past, it has been later, and people, it's a heavy hors d'oeuvre. So people use it, I think, instead of dinner, they just eat snacks and you know, and whatever. Because if you're going to do it from 6 to 8, restaurants, by the time you get to a restaurant in Monterey, it's closed. You know, it is dinner hour, I believe. But I think it is true in February, particularly, it gets dark earlier than in April. And so people could come at 4 and leave at 5:30 and still get home before dark. So it does make sense for the older community members.
Yeah, that brings to mind another point, Marcia, that if it were still in April, we'd be on daylight saving time by then, and it would be lighter later. Whereas in February, it's going to be dark early. So that's just another point to see if the Friends would be happy with starting at 4 and the library closing at 1.
So perhaps Brian could reflect this back to them. Do you talk to those folks, or?
Yeah, I did. I mean, that's
Go ahead,
their preference. Their preference is to do the 4 p.m. So if we wanted to make that the motion today, I think they would prefer to put this out there as soon as possible, like information and advertisement. So if we would make that as part of this discussion to close at 1 p.m. and for the events, for the setup, and then that way also for people that are kind of straggling that night, you know, if for 4 to 6 you have the additional hour or whatever to make sure everyone gets out of the building and everything.
And Brian, your recommendation, you're okay with closing it at 1 for this event? I mean,
Yeah, I think I'm just, you know, I just wanted to make sure that my take on it is that I know from the board is just the vision to basically stay open as much as possible and not impact public services. But this is a big event, big community event for everybody, and making sure it works for all parties. So I understand that part about people not wanting to drive at night often too. So there's that kind of component to it. So yeah, and with our core donors, I think a lot of them would probably prefer something outdoors and something that's a little bit better weather and during the light time. So I think I might reach out to them, and I'm okay with that. I'm okay if we closed at 1, as long as it's, you know, amenable to the board as well.
Do any other board members have comments or insights before I check and see if we have any members of the public who wish to address this issue? Seeing none, Francesca, do we have any members of the public who wish to weigh in?
If you'd like to make a public comment, please raise your Zoom hand. And Chair Falguth, there are no public comments.
Okay, then I would entertain a motion to approve the revised schedule with the change that on February 25th, Saturday, for the chocolate and wine benefit, instead of what's printed here, close at 3, we would close at 1. Would someone like to make a motion to that effect?
And we're there, this is actually a 2-part item, so we're just not going to, and not that I want to, but we're not going to change from what was presented a month ago to the Thanksgiving schedule. We're going to stay open on Saturday of Thanksgiving weekend.
Yeah.
Okay. In that case, I move that we pass the, let's see, this is item number 2, the change in schedule with the alteration that we have the event at 4 and close the library at 1 on Saturday, February 25th.
Is there a second? Thank you, Marcia. Roll call vote, please.
Trustee Moreau,
yes.
Trustee Petty,
Yes.
Trustee Silvera,
Yes.
Vice Chair Joshi,
Yes.
and Chair Falguth.
Yes,
Thank you.
thank you.
And thank you, Brian, for having the staff do that extra research about how busy the library is on Saturday. It was interesting to see that, and I think it did show that we need the library to be open as much as possible.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You're sure right, Janie. And actually, I checked a bunch of libraries for Thanksgiving, in and around Thanksgiving this past month, and looking at Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday, those 5 days, I could not find any library that wasn't open at least one of them. And in our case, since we're closed Monday and Sunday, and the city is closed on Thursday and Friday, that means almost by default, we need to stay open on Saturday. But I couldn't find any library that wasn't open at least one of those 5 days.
Great, thank you. On to the next item, item number 3, receive report on annual statistics.
Hey, so that's me again.
It
Hello.
is. It's the Brian
So,
show.
Worked on this with David as well, and so just providing some of the statistics. These go through just so you know, these are on the fiscal year, so these are going through. You know, you will see these kind of board reports. I'm sorry, We did this in the board past years, and the data reflects the data through June 30th, 2022. So that's July 1 and through June 30th. So just wanted to give you a synopsis off of here as we're kind of recovering and returning. So this doesn't include some of the data, of course, since August and, you know, just this last quarter. But if you wanted to take a look at any of this and had any feedback or any questions on any of these items here, but of course you'll see because of, you know, 2020 and 2021 with a limited access, you know, that's why the numbers are just so low on there. So, and yeah, and then but then the annual state library report comparison document, which was a single page. These were specific items that were asked to be pulled out in a comparison last year. So I worked on this data with Francesca, and you know, we have, you know, see the number of library visits, and as I talked about, you know, these are coming up through the end basically of June, so the numbers aren't really reflective of kind of the increased numbers that we are seeing right now from being open again. But you know, these are all what we've reported to the state reports. We did add a link on there on the document to where you can find the ready reports. So if you're looking at past reports from the state library and you want to look at the comparison or where we are compared to some of our neighboring libraries on the Counting Opinions, California, ca.countingopinions.com, that has a list of different data that the state library asks. And the state library has a form that they send us out every year, like we want you to fill this out in this kind of format. So we work on the data. All of this is based on state library on there. So the you know, as you'll see on here, we're at the hours open, days open per week. It's dropped since the 2019 times, the salaries and wages, all of that. Physical collections, expenditures has dropped, and you know, operating cost per capita, all of these things are on there, so you can see just the numbers. And then we'll get more. We won't get the state report again. We won't do this until next end of kind of next fiscal year. We'll start getting the reports and any documents and any changes from the state library around that time. And yeah, you'll see the staff, the visits per staff FTE has been going up, and circulations per open hour went up in there. So happy to answer any questions if anybody has anything regarding just on the state report.
Marcia?
Well, just two things. And the state report, it was very gratifying to see the numbers, our numbers going up and for the, you know, employees and things like that. It was interesting that the only one that went down, electronic materials expenditures went down, but you know, seeing the number of hires, how they plummeted the number of staff and then back up again. But I did have a, you know, my general impression on the numbers, the programs for teens and the use of the library by teens is so low compared to, I think, what it used to be. And maybe that's a great argument for going back to the city and saying we need more staff to pay more attention to the teens to get them back in. I mean, that's the area that looks so, I mean, everything, all the numbers for teens are just really low. And
yeah, I can also say that we've been seeing an increase of teens actually just coming in to just hang out. And they're just here in the library like every day since I've started here. And in the past month, we've been seeing just groups of them coming in and sitting in the terrace or sitting in the nooks and getting together. Their use of the library in terms of just checkout is traditionally pretty low, but so it doesn't always reflect, data on this doesn't always reflect like our actual teens' use of the space, you know, because like our Wi-Fi use will be up higher. They don't typically, we don't see them a lot on the PCs. We don't see them a lot on the desktop computers that we have, but we might see them on, they're working on their laptops or they're working on their devices. And that's, but you're right, the programs that we've had some programs, and that's in the activity report. I know Kim will talk a bit on the activity report, but we've done some different teen stuff by different library staff. So myself, Kim, Sarah, bringing in, and it really does take somebody that's dedicated here, that's going to build that connection to have teens come in and tell their friends, hey, don't you know about this event? And don't you know about this? And they're bringing in their friends regularly and using the library interacting with us rather than just using it as a space where they're just gathering and independent of us. So I think there's a great, argument to say, there's a lot more we could do with the teens, with a teen librarian, a dedicated teen librarian, this upcoming fiscal year.
Yes. My thoughts exactly.
Yes. Anyone else?
I just had another newbie question about the total physical collection versus the total collection. So the total collection would include things like electronic journals or something. I mean, it's so much higher pre-COVID than it is, during COVID. So I wasn't sure exactly what that included.
I believe that does include total digital content as well.
Okay.
And Kim, I'm not sure if you have anything else to add to that, but it's, I believe if we dropped any digital resources during COVID, that would, if we had and I'm not, because I wasn't employed here at that time, but if we dropped any other kind of streaming resources or like a Hoopla or any other kind of service like that, that would have really cut back on our total number of items.
Okay.
Because a lot of times they have numbers of songs and videos and these kind of things, and like individual songs might be considered items in some of those e-resources.
Okay.
Are you asking Janie about the amount shown on packet page 20 that was spent on those materials?
No, I was asking about the number, the actual number of items that, varied so much in
Which line are you looking at?
pre-COVID. It says it's under total operating expenses. There's total physical collection, print and AV, and then total collection. So I was wondering.
Yeah, those are expenditures. It's the amount of money spent. That's not the number of items.
No, there is a place where there is a number of items. It's under the operating, under the block of operating expenses.
Items.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's the total, Bob. Yeah, Trustee Petty. Yeah, that's the total number of items. Is what I was looking at the data. That's the total items on there.
It's
And
the
what-
fifth block from the bottom, Bob.
Page
the
20.
bottom.
Page
Yeah.
20.
And it says for 2018-19, there were 550,000 total items, including electronic as well as print. And so I was asking what specifically those were.
Okay, I understand where you're coming from now. Thank you.
So it's anything that a library user would have access to, whether it's a print journal, an electronic journal, or whatever.
Right.
And correct me if I'm wrong, didn't we do a massive weeding prior to doing the putting in the RFID chips, which helps explain a little bit why the total collection numbers dwindled?
Yeah, that's exactly true for the physical items.
Yeah. Any other questions or comments? Is there anyone from the public who wish to weigh in on this?
To make a public comment, please raise your Zoom hand. There are no public comments, Chair Falguth.
Thank you. And since we're just simply receiving a report, I don't believe there's any action at this point we need to take other than receive it. Which then moves us on to informational reports and staff comments. Item number 4, received library and museums director activity report.
That's me. Hello. Hello again. Yeah, just let me, I appreciate any feedback if you guys prefer these in PowerPoint, visual in the future, or text. How do you prefer it? Just let me know. But we attended a National Philanthropy Day in Central Coast out in Pebble Beach, and Doug Holtzman and Diane Delormier were recognized for their service for the Friends and Foundation, which was great to see them recognized out there. We've had a couple of different folks join the library. Lucia Neal, and I don't remember if I mentioned this last time, but she accepted a role as our regular part-time. That's the acronym right there, RPT. So she has gone into more hours. She was previously a part-timer as our library assistant. And Jonathan Fan is our intern working from Middlebury Institute, and he's working with me on library and museums, different policies, and our project with the museums right now. We had our library staff won the best locals theme for the City of Monterey Halloween costume contest, which was quite fun. I was Doc Ricketts, and the staff were the sea creatures, and we had a great time. And right after that, we held our staff day, and over at my museum, and Chair Felguth attended some of that, and that was just a way for us to kind of meet outside of the library and just kind of get a sense of like what a children's space is going to be as part of. I felt like having it out of space where it's interactive, tactile, especially as we're looking at our MC Gives campaign for a children's space that's interactive, of like getting people all on board with how do people use things. So it was an interesting day out there. Our 2 FE self-checkout machines are inside the library, and the Biblioteca units, we are still have them out there. A lot of people are still automatically walking towards the Biblioteca self-checkouts because they're used to them. So I've been asking staff to just make sure to talk with people, walk them through the new units, show them how they work. So it makes it a lot seamless, and people are surprised at how fast they are. They're really, they operate quite well, I think. We're planning on having the older units through at least December out on the floor. I'm just working on getting the shipping back to them, but it gives us an opportunity where I didn't want to send them out right away and then have problems with any new equipment and then have any kind of compatibility issues. So this gives us time frame for to kind of ease people over of, hey, we've got new machines, let's try them out. Trustee Petty, you have a question on this?
When you're ready to get rid of the older self-checkout machines and only use the new ones, are you going to move the new ones to where the old ones are now, or are you going to leave them, I think, facing the wrong direction? Because people walk in and they see the help desk, and you don't really see the new checkout machines until you walk and make that sort of turn to the right toward the magazine reading area. But if they were where the old self-checkout ones are, then people walk in or they come downstairs with a book, they immediately see where they should go to self-check.
So we've discussed that, like as a team, like all our staff discussed that, and we chose that placement where they're at right now because partially they're visible from the staff, where the bibliotecas, we don't see them if there's an issue with the screen isn't visible. And you'll see the surrounding, the LED light on there. We can program that light. So if the paper goes low, the machine goes yellow. If there's an issue with the system, we set it up as red. There's issues that we set up, and so it's a visual alert, and they do have that sign. The other thing we talked about before was putting the Western flyer model there where those self-checkouts were, so that the model would be closer to the desk, so that because I know that there's the thought of having that out there for Cannery Row days, but I don't feel comfortable having the Western flyer model somewhere outside of view of the staff, like further out. You know, I think having it there at the desk is a good place to go. So it's a walkable, so it's not something where because we have a line also when people come in for a line for service from the staff, and then you have somebody on the opposite side of you. They often they just hand over their card. Oh, I've got a problem with this item. When you have the computer that's right next to you behind you, that's where we find where the bibliotecas are right now. Somebody comes in behind you and says, hey, I need help with this. And meanwhile, you've got a line up here. So coordinating, so you've got a separation of person service and self-service.
What I can't remember is if I say I go over to the corner there and I take a book off the hold shelf and I'm walking toward the help desk where the librarian is. Right now, the new self-check machines, I have to look around over my right shoulder to see them. Is there a sign on that pillar, on that wall against which the new machines are placed that says self-checkout here or something like that? If not, maybe we could put one there so that if you're walking toward where the librarians are from the hold books corner, they walk and see, oh, I go to the right here and I self-check. Because now they see the old self-checkouts right away and it's a straight shot. And if they need to make the turn, I think maybe a little directional sign there indicating go to the right at this point and there you are.
I will say we have the hanging sign, the checkout sign, the circular sign.
Oh, okay. I just couldn't remember.
We probably need to move that over about a foot if possible, because I was hanging up the angel in there in the library, and that kind of butts up against the hanging sign. So either we have to move the angels in the future years or move the sign over anyways to kind of be over a little bit. So it's something, we talked about as myself with Kim and David as well, about whether moving the sign over a little bit at some point. So as a marker. We're going through our MC Gives campaign, as you may have seen, or My Place to Learn, and I've reached out to a couple community partners in First Five, Monterey County, and Chomp and their Ohana, and reached out to a couple other places as well, just to see how they can assist us in designing inclusive spaces for our families in here for the children's area. So we have some specialists and people that work with children in there to give us some feedback as well. Along with that, working on an early learning hub grant. This is for approximately, I'm crossing my fingers on this, of course. This would be just money for that children's area as well. So this is with the California State Library through Black Gold. And that's, if we got that, that would really help out the ability to do anything there with the shelving and installation, all of that work that needs to be done if we're really going to revise that children's area for that grant purpose. Right now, our intern Jonathan is working on our meeting room policy, and I asked him to go through all of the MOBAC, the Monterey Bay Area Consortium and Pacific Library Partnership, to look at meeting room policies. And I sent a revised draft to our city attorney just to review before bringing it here to the board. And we're looking to bring it to the board for the January meeting. So I'll be checking in with the city attorney and then working on that before bringing it forward for more review. We did get our grant from California Revealed. This is one of the grants I applied for back when I was volunteering. And it was to digitize some of our Ruppel collection. This is for the 1949 centennial here in Monterey. And I've met with Dennis Copeland, Andres Garza, and we are working on the list for the California Revealed project. But we'll be sending these in, and then this way we'll have our digital collection, our first digital collection there on California Revealed, and we could build off of that. I did reach out initially because the Ruppel collection is about 9,000 items. And this specifically, there's a couple pulled up collections. There's an 1846, I'm sorry, a 1946 and then a 1949 centennial that the city of Monterey celebrated. And so this one, I checked in with them and they preferred, based on their backlog for California Revealed, a single project. So that's why we went with the 1949 centennial. And then also coordinated a meeting for the content management system. This is something to discuss. If you looked at like Monterey County Free Library, and they use these content DM for their content management system for their digital content. So if you want to look up digital collections on there. So we scheduled a meeting with them to discuss what the options are and set up and everything with that, because we were looking at doing a digital content for a lot of the items that we've been working on digitizing for years here, and having a public facing side so people can see what kinds of collections we have in our California history room before they come and order prints or come to look at us and work with our librarians. The terrace mural has begun. I hope you guys get a chance to go out there. It looks great. We have it blocked off right now so people can't walk up to it because it's in progress. The artist Natalia and her assistant Raven are on break until beginning of the year. We believe they'll be back around early January to start again. But if you get a chance to come to the library in the next couple of weeks, please go up to the terrace to check out the mural. And yeah, we added a couple items to our bookstore here. We have our the Monterey couple Monterey what do you call it, ornaments, the Colton Hall, Pacific Biological Labs, and Presidio Monterey, as well as our Monterey Angels note cards. Those are items that were being sold there in the Colton Hall, and I talked with our museum staffs about putting them in here. So the money for that actually goes back to the museums, but as we get a lot of foot traffic in here and having the library store here, it's great to just highlight things that we have here that's going to go back to help our, our operations there. And the removal of door service in 2023 with library staff. So we've been doing the door service, which we assign staff from 10 to 12. And when we do that service, we have about 5 people total that use that service. But because we have such low staff, we have a person that's assigned 10 o'clock to 11 o'clock, 11 to 12. And as we're looking at reopening our community room and, offering any new service, it's hard to justify having that service available just for that short period. So I asked for Monterey County Free Library to drop off the brochures for books by mail, because Monterey County has extended books by mail to the entire county. So even though they serve, they are the unincorporated or other cities that Monterey County works with, they do work with, they will offer books by mail to anybody who lives anywhere in Monterey County. So this is people that may not want to come into a library at all. We will highlight e-resources in that. But this has been a service that's taking a lot of staff time for us to dedicate somebody for that hour. And we're discussed with Monterey, like our ISD department, upgrading our printing system and wireless network in 2023. These are items our public computer stations, like the how do you log into the system, our wireless network, the print system, those are all interconnected right now by the same vendor. And so we're looking, we have limited licenses there on the Wi-Fi at a time, and it does have a timer that we use with it. And so the city's going to be upgrading our wireless network here coming year. And then we will be looking at a new print management system or quotes on new printers to be updated as well, and all of that. So that'll be coming up soon. And along with that, there's a new Robinson Jeffers Plaza, the Monterey Conference Center. There's some new sculptures out there if you haven't seen them. We have the Western Flyer Foundation is coming out. They had their event because the Western Flyer is coming out early next year. You'll see more information about that coming pretty soon. And let's see, the collection assessment for preservation, that's another grant that I received. That's just to do a review on the collection and facility assessment for Colton Hall and the old jail in our collection there. So did some interviews with some potential collection assessors and building assessors for that. And we have our expanded path of history. We're finalizing our proposals with that. Our Monterey Museum of Art, the miniatures, that just closed, but that was great to be participants in there. And other things, our Christmas in the Adobes held in Colton Hall. I don't recall the total count. I know Francesca might, I'll have to call you out, Francesca, but you might recall the numbers. But we have Saturday, unfortunately, was a pretty rainy day. So the Friday I know that they were allowing anybody that had Saturday tickets to attend on Friday, but Colton Hall was free to anybody anyways. So you didn't have to have a wristband to go into Colton Hall on Friday or Saturday, but they moved the cider and cookies inside Colton Hall on Saturday. So with that, any questions or comments? Happy to answer.
We had just over 1,000 people for both nights.
Thank you, Francesca.
Sorry, Bob, I was muted. Did you have a question?
Yeah, Brian, I am not clear from when you were talking. I have two things I want to mention. One, the door service. The item in our agenda packet says you were discussing removal of the door service. Is that still an open issue? You're just discussing it, or have you firmly decided to stop it? Because what I'm thinking is if we're open 5 days a week and you get about 5 people a day, that's, maybe a couple dozen a week is all using that service. But if they're mostly, I think, and correct me if I'm wrong, Kim, but I think these are probably people that are coming to get books that are on the hold shelf mostly. And because if they're not on the hold shelf, then they'd have to go in the library to browse around. So they're mostly asking staff to go to the hold counter or the shelf and bring it to the door, so the patrons don't have to come inside. And we always have like a week and a half after you get the notice that there's a book waiting for you to pick up. So if we get a couple dozen people a week, even instead of spreading them out over 5 days, what if we just had this service open 1 2-hour period a week?
Well,
And
it's
then-
not a couple dozen people. It's like 5 people total. So
For
some
the-
weeks.
For
so
over
some
what
weeks
period
we
of
get
time?
3 people, and some weeks we get like 4 people.
So it's
I
5
thought that was
people
a
a
daily
week,
head
not
count.
5 people a day.
Yeah.
It's 5
Right.
people a week.
Oh, okay, that's different. I thought it was 5 people a day, and then if you collapse them into 1 day, then it would make, the time worthwhile. But
No, it's 5, just like 5 total customers. That's what they said.
weekly,
That's,
Per week.
yeah,
Yeah.
weekly, okay. Then I
It's
think,
1 a day.
unless we want to go back and reconsider something that the board looked at, maybe, months and months ago, which was what some libraries have. They have a locker system outside. And if somebody wants to pick up a book from the outside, there was a locker there, kind of like Amazon at Whole Foods. But I think that was prohibitively expensive, if I
Yeah.
remember right.
Yeah, it was very expensive.
But I think, until we have further indoor restrictions, then probably the door service has served the purpose for which it was very necessary. The other question I had was, Brian, you said that you've sent a draft policy for meeting room policies to the city attorney.
mhm.
Were there problems with the meeting room policies that existed that needed to be changed or addressed? Or what, I'm curious what prompted a new policy, especially one that is so new it has to be taken to the city attorney.
Yeah, so anything with the city attorney wants to review any policies that we update anywhere on here. One of the things on this here is there is the requests right now that we get these requests from the customers, the public, is to reopen the solarium as a shared space. So small space, and what we get more often than that is people saying, I have a group of 4 people, I have a group of 5 people. These are students, these are people that want either a small space to meet, where you have a team group, you have students from the schools all around here, MPC, CSUMB, wherever they're going to be, and they want a space to meet as a group, and a small group and not be talking. You can be able to talk and close the door and not interrupt the other people in the public. And so this is a space where somebody comes in and says, I have a Zoom interview at 2 p.m. tomorrow, and I'd love to be able to use a room here in the library. And then we have this room, which it's in the policy, basically states it's used at the same way as the community room. and whether you have to be a nonprofit group. And if you're not a nonprofit group, it's going to be open for the general public for people to come in and use. Well, with just a smaller room and a smaller space, it doesn't make sense to open as a shared space right now, especially when we've continue to spread out tables and chairs in there. So it serves the purpose to basically separate out that space right there from the general community room on there. And then there's also some of the things on the community room regarding charging for non-card holders and that aspect of it. But really, the start of it is really to take the solarium outside of that the general community room, so that you have a space that is available for the purpose that we are getting a lot of requests here from the public.
When you walk down the little hallway toward the community room door, the bathrooms are on the right, and then the first room on the left, we've even had board meetings in there when there was a conflict with the community room. But I think it used to be called the Learning Lab, possibly.
Mm-hmm.
The very first door there. I don't know what that's used for nowadays, but that is a small space that, and you know, when we went through the G4 proposal, one of the things that came up over and over again was to have small spaces for tutoring and for small groups like 3 or 4. Is that room a possible location for that kind of activity? The first door on the left as you walk toward the bathrooms?
Yeah, the Learning Lab, also some of the staff still call it the C+ room in there. We've actually been holding smaller programs in there. We've been working with 3D printing. There's been doing some 3D printing programs in that room recently. So it is active, and we put in some other equipment that we recently bought inside of there. So we've been using it for our staff space and for some programs. But we haven't, because we're using it with the equipment, it hasn't been thought of as like a bookable space for the public, because it would be more along the lines of, I could see that as like a staff-led or volunteer-led memory lab or learning lab, where you could book hours, if you had specific technology. So because we're using a lot of that technology in that current space.
Yeah. Well, I'm just coming from the general notion that as we reopened, starting months ago, we were going to try to be innovative and not just flip the switch and do everything the same way, but reuse spaces and reconstruct spaces. And we moved the furniture at the reference desk, around, so it was more compatible with the public and the staff. And I was just wondering what that little space was being used for.
Yeah, and we have been getting questions about other kind of programs and services in here, and I have past experience in working with kind of some of these different equipment, and I do think it's just on the staff time or getting people on the volunteers to get in there. But I think using that as a hybrid space, which we kind of control, but not just have it for somebody, hey, I want to do a Zoom call and then come in, and then you've got access to a bunch of equipment, which
Expensive equipment.
expensive, and we don't want you kind of using it without some kind of knowledge on how to do that or direction.
Yeah.
But there's definitely a lot of possibilities for that space that you're talking about, Trustee.
And similarly for what we used to call the quiet reading room, that it wasn't getting used for much of anything, or at least not very frequently. And from time to time, we had meetings there with the community committee for the G4 proposal. There's that space too for, I guess, kind of medium-sized groups, maybe.
It's a great space. To be true, yeah.
Marcia?
Just a quick process question. When you change a policy, does that go to the city attorney and then it comes to the board, or it goes to the board first and then the city attorney? I don't remember. The city attorney reviews it for content, and then it comes back to the board for final something. Is that right? I know we did a whole bunch of policies in the last couple of years. We went through a whole bunch with the staff also. Kim remembers that, I'm sure. And I know we approved it, but I don't know where the city attorney was in.
This is actually new. I happened to speak with Chrissy Davi because I also didn't recall city attorney reviewing the policies first.
Yeah,
She
Right.
did that this is a newer practice. Previously, it was the board that would do the final approval without review by city attorney. So now they're asking to see it first.
so they want to see it and then it comes back to the board once
Mhm.
it's kosher and legal and all that. Okay, great, thank you.
Perfect. Any other questions or comments? Are there any members of the public who wish to weigh in?
Let's see, if you would like to make a public comment, please raise your Zoom hand. And there are no public comments, Chair Falgood.
Thank you, Francesca. Then let's move on to item 5, receive quarterly report on library activities.
Okay, so there's of course a lot of overlap with Brian's report, but I'll highlight a few things on here. We've had a lot of success with the crafting and STEM programmings for a
Mhm.
variety of ages. We are doing Crafty Kids with our on-call librarian Peggy. That's happening 2 times a month on Wednesday afternoons for like elementary school age kids. We're offering the teen crafting, which hasn't been bringing in a lot of teens, but it's nice that we're offering something. So, you know, when we interact with the teens, we can tell them that it exists. And then we also have our bookmobile coordinator is doing a sewing program once a month. And we were shocked on the November session, 35 kids, we have a sign up online, but 35 kids showed up, a bunch of people showed up that hadn't signed up. Which was a huge turnout, but that has been really popular. And then Mary has also done a STEM event with paper circuits on the bookmobile at Montecito Park, which they made holiday light up cards, which were largely successful. And then our history programs are still really popular. We've done more with Tim Thomas. We had another lecture from a professor who talked about the Jazz Festival. And then we helped host the Robert Louis Stevenson Unbirthday celebration, which was prior to the pandemic. So this was the first one again since after the pandemic. And then I'll just mention again that we've had a huge, even though we don't have a full-time youth librarian right now, and we haven't been doing much outreach to the schools, we've had a huge number of teachers reach out to us to set up class visits. So we've had, Peggy has hosted a number of those. I've hosted a couple, but a lot of kindergarten and first grade classes. But we've also had like middle schoolers from Trinity Christian School who came for a research orientation. So it's good that the teachers are reaching out to us. And then, for example, Bayview Academy contacted us about having the bookmobile come to them. So we did kind of a introductory swing through. We went on 2 different Fridays because Mary met with every single class on the Bayview lower campus. So that was a lot of rotating. Yeah, I think those are the main highlights that I have. If anybody has any questions, I'm happy to answer them.
It's really encouraging to see things coming back to life and the community taking full advantage of that. So kudos to the staff. Bob?
Yeah, as a participant in a citizen science program through California State Parks, I'm curious to know a little more, Kim, about, let's see, it's on packet page 27, reference to the citizen science programming and disaster response for libraries program. I'm just curious what that involves and how it works, because I'm in a citizen science program through State Park, so caught my eye.
Um,
And if you're not sure right now, you can say, I'll let you know in January. That's fine.
Yeah, I'll have to let you know in January. That was something that Mary, our bookmobile coordinator, did. And so I can't tell you exactly what she learned about, but I will find out and let you know.
Thank you, appreciate it. Because it's a great way for I mean, I'm finding it firsthand through state parks. It's a great way for the public to be involved in something, you know, that is like a step or two removed from our daily life.
Any other questions or comments? Any public input?
To make a public comment, please raise your Zoom hand. Chair Falguth, there are no public comments.
Thank you. Item 6, receive financial report.
Yes, so this is, you'll see on the general fund and library trust fund expenditure reports attached, and some of these items just haven't been posted yet. So this is as of when we submitted this to the agenda, but happy to discuss anything on here, any kind of questions you have for this. And this is for, as a reminder, for the fiscal year rather than on a calendar year.
Yeah,
Go ahead, Marcia.
this is just my, I forget what this means, kind of question. So the difference between the adopted budget and the amended budget is, this is, adopted one is what you thought you would have. And then the amended one is what turned out to be, is that?
My understanding, and correct me if I'm wrong, Kim or Francesca, is some of these things we've had to go back to council to make amendments to things after what was done initially in July. So when the first budget was submitted, so for example, we've received additional funds from somewhere, that's where the amended budget would just be where we are actually received and adopted afterwards.
Okay, so there was a pretty big difference in the library trust fund, for example, from 174 to 260. But so that meant maybe reflected additional donations that came in, or?
I can look into that. I believe, I thought, was that one of the state library grants, I believe. I can double check on that.
Okay, yeah, just curious.
Anyone
It's,
else?
it looks like it's good news anyway, right? It's more money.
Yeah.
More about smaller, we'd worry.
Yeah.
All right. Any public input on this item?
To make a public comment, please raise your Zoom hand. And there are no public comments, Chair Falguth.
Thank you. Item 7, receive statistical report.
Just going back into this, this is our when we have our this has our October usage on here, and happy to discuss anything on here. Any kind of questions or concerns coming up or no, are as we've been saying, our patron app, I've been trying to talk this up with people at the direction of some of the trustees here to try to get that usage up there. And it'll be interesting to see how our self-checkout usage increases with having more units. Unfortunately, we won't have 4 in perpetuity, but having 4 units really helps out for checkout percentages. But the total number of people coming in did increase for October. California History Room, with having Andres here, he's been helpful in getting people in there in the room, and also with Dennis, so getting an increase of people in the history room. And yeah, the total number of, the checkouts have gone down a little bit, and the library card numbers are pretty steady on there. So but we're still getting, you'll see where there's actually an increase of people. So we're just seeing a lot of people just kind of coming into the library just to use it. And also just the use of, as I was mentioning before, with the teens coming in to just use it as a space to access wireless, to just do homework or sit at a table
Mhm.
for their own purpose. So I think having, if you come in here, oftentimes between 3 and 5 or 4 to 6, it might be hard to actually get a chair here in the library. There's quite a lot of times where they're all being taken up by people in there. So the numbers of total checkouts are not always on there. And it's good to see, having a couple programs for teens on there. The youth programs increase as Kim was mentioning, going up, and the attendance jumping up there. So yeah, and the volunteers have been steady. We've been getting a lot of volunteers here, and it's great to see them really continue to contribute here to the library to help us keep going. So yeah, with that, happy to answer any questions.
Any of the trusts, Bob, go ahead.
Yeah, I'll just point out what I usually do, and because these are total numbers, with regard to the attendance at adult programs. If you look back at what it was in the earliest year on these charts, 2018-19, the average attendance per adult program was 9. The next year, it was 15. And this past year, November 2021 to 2 months ago, it jumped up to 17 and a half. So despite the ebb and flow of everything, the attendance per program, per adult program, has continued to increase. And so I think that to whatever extent adults set an example for the rest of the age groups we monitor, we should keep that in mind.
Thank you. Anyone else? Are there any public comments on this?
There are no public comments at this time.
Thank you, Francesca. Then we will move on to trustee comments. Let's see, Trustee Silvera.
Well, my significant other, Frank, and he's also a retired librarian, went to the book sale held in the community room again. And not that we more books, but very impressed with the amount of materials and the number of people that were buying them. And yeah, it was great to see that again.
Great. Trustee Petty.
2 things. I want to give a positive shout out to Brian because for all of the activity and effort that he's put into outside sources of funding and grants and finding out about ways that we can take advantage of these things instead of simply relying on donations in our city budgets. I think that's just a real positive thing that hasn't taken very long for him to get involved with. And well, frankly, it was probably one of the reasons we hired him, because we saw that on his resume from where he was before. But I didn't want to let that to go unnoticed. And also, I want to thank Francesca very much for including in the read report that came in the other email you sent out, including the pictures of the painting going on the mural upstairs. It was very nice to sort of see the work in action, even if they're on hiatus for a while and taking a break. Appreciated seeing that because we approved it a long time ago, and it's nice to see the progress that's being taken, and it looks great. So thanks, Francesca, for including those photos, and have a safe holiday season, everyone.
And I do want to share that Brian did take those photos.
Well, but you sent the email. I knew Brian would have taken them.
Trustee Moreau.
I just want to acknowledge the fact that our director is not only a grant writer and a director, but also an artist. I didn't realize that. So kudos to you for having a piece of art in the miniatures. And I just want to wish everybody a happy holiday season and safe and stay well.
Vice Chair Joshi.
I want to acknowledge and thank all the different groups that make this library such a wonderful place.
Yeah.
The staff, of course, the volunteers, Friends and Foundation, and the board. So thanks to all of us, this place is coming along really well and it's become a popular place.
Thank you. I'm thrilled that the library is reviving and thriving. I'm especially pleased to see the increase in bookmobile services, children's services, and I'm going to be truly jazzed if we can get a teen librarian on staff and address that need. With a high school right across the street, it's just screaming for a teen librarian. I also want to thank Brian and the staff for taking advantage of opportunities to get us out into the community, to explore some new fundraising opportunities through grants and other partnerships. And I'll end by wishing everyone a very happy holiday season. Looking forward to seeing you all in the new year. So thank you all.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank
Mhm.
you.
I
Happy
move to
holidays.
adjourn. Do we need a motion to adjourn or we can, you can just?
Oh.
Now,
Chair can do it.
Okay.
let's go ahead, and the meeting is adjourned at 5:19 p.m. Thank you,
Yep.
everyone.